It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. Kicking off the show tonight, we heard something from the latest release from Snake Eyes 7 from their Medicine Man release with Can You Hear Me Calling? And we just heard some Madman's Lullaby. That one comes from their Sins of Greed release with Little Demons. And stepping to the mic is the little demon of the Classic Metal Show himself, Chris Aiken. What's going on, Chris?
I think that's the first time anybody's ever referred to any part of me as little.
The little demon inside that just haunts your soul.
Yeah, well, it must like haunting a definite blackness, because that's all I have in my soul.
Well, he's just at home there.
Yeah, he lives there. And right by now, it's a full 13-story apartment building worth of hate.
Yeah, the darkness makes me who I am, to quote Danzig.
Yes. Well, and you know, if Danzig said it, it must be true.
It's very dark.
Very dark and evil, man.
Right. Well, we are back here on the Classic Metal Show in the middle of February, and looking forward to the better weather coming our way.
Yeah, that was a hell of a long intro, man. 46 minutes.
Yeah, I know. You know, I was doing some maintenance 2.5 hours before the show, and you know, the server used to boot up about an hour and 20 minutes.
Which, that seems like it's too long.
Yeah, it took over 2 hours to boot. I don't know why, but, you know, I thought, okay, 2.5 hours before the show, got plenty of time. And then, you know, show time rolls around, and it's still booting. And like 20 minutes later, it's just like 2 hours and 10 minutes it took to boot up.
I have a feeling I know why, but I'll have to look at it. We've had that server running now, what, 8 years or something?
8 years, yeah.
And we've never, ever once cleared the logs. So it has a record of every single track that has played 24/7 for 8 years.
All right.
In the database. And I'll bet you it's just cycling through that to make sure that there's no corruption in the database.
All right. Well, whatever it takes, it takes a long time, so I know better now.
Yeah, I'll look at it this week with all my free time to.
Yeah, of course.
I'll see if I can't get in there and just wipe that database clean.
Right, absolutely. Well, speaking of wiping the database clean, or you wiped your back out this week.
Well, not this week. It's been a few weeks. I actually barely made it through the show last week. My back was hurting so fucking bad, but you know, I toughed it out last week, and it's just gotten progressively worse. You know, as the days have gone on, it feels a little better today, but it might be because I took a handful of fucking aspirins before the show. But yeah, my back's a little fucked up, but is what it is. You know. Well,
you missed out on the Max Sabbath show because of it.
I probably could have gone, but the thought of just standing on asphalt for 4 to 5 hours with my back fucking feeling like it's popping out of the skin, I was like, I don't think so. You know, I was like, nah, I think I'll pass on that.
Well, somehow you made it through the Zakk Wylde COC show, though.
Seats.
Oh, that was a seated theater. Okay.
It was a seated theater versus the Beachland, which is not.
I see.
So, you know, that was, if they had seats for Max Sabbath, I would have gone. But since it looked like it was a standing one, I was like, nah, I'm just going to stay home.
Right. Well, I see that Jackal's been posting photos of his experience with Max Sabbath.
Yeah, he said it was fun.
Yeah, it looks fun. It looks like they got a pretty cool stage show.
Yeah, I'm sure it's great. I'll catch them eventually, just not this run.
Yeah. Well, up until 3 weeks ago, I never even were aware that they existed. Now that's all I hear about is Max Sabbath.
And when they come to Valparaiso, you won't go.
Well, you never know, but
it's still too far.
Yeah, it's still too far. I actually have to go to the end of my driveway and beyond.
Dude, what the funniest part is, we have that P.O. box. How far is the P.O. box from your place?
17 miles.
Okay, so it's a little bit of a drive.
Yeah,
and it's an hour there and back.
Yeah, at least.
Okay, and you probably go once every 3 months?
I go 4 times a year.
You got, and basically the only time you for sure go is if somebody tells you specifically they sent something.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you ought to see all the garbage I pull out of there.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine the bullshit that you get, press releases and just bullshit that gets mailed there.
Yeah, I just stand there and sort through the mail and then just throw it all in the trash.
Keep the boxes and throw everything else in the trash
for
can?
the most part. Yeah, I mean, there's a few things, but you know, like you said, I get a lot of media mail, CDs and things like that. And
do you keep all the CDs or do you pitch some of them just on contact?
Well, first I have to open them.
Right.
And that in itself, I got a stack of CDs that I have not opened.
Do you? Here's the question. Like, if you get a disc, and you can just tell it's something that you would never play, or never, if it's some death metal writing on the cover, do you even give it 3 seconds of a listen, or does it go straight in the trash?
It just goes straight in the trash.
Same here.
Yeah, I won't. You know, if it doesn't even look remotely interesting, I just won't even address it.
I'm so bad with that now. Even with the download links, I look at the name of the band and the band photo, and if the band photo looks like a bunch of fags, I just delete.
Bunch of fags.
Dude, well, they all do. These millennials with their fucking skinny jeans and their faggy, I'm so depressed look. Fuck off. Beat it. I don't want to hear it.
Too funny. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that we're on the media list for a bunch of stuff, but unfortunately we don't get too many quality things unless, of course, we're talking about the melodic rock bands.
That's right.
The Melodic Rock Fest coming up in May.
Sure. Which
you and I will be hosting.
We will. New addition to the lineup. Gary Moon, former lead singer of Night Ranger, is going to be there.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, that should be interesting. And I actually like that album.
And he's going to be there with a full band instead. He's not like doing an acoustic or a solo show. He's actually doing a full band. Is that what I read correctly?
That's what I hear. He's doing a full band show, and he's going to do some of those Night Ranger tunes. And did you know he was in Three Dog Night?
I was not aware of that.
He was also in Three Dog Night for a minute playing bass.
Yeah. Well, there's two original members of Three Dog Night still alive, but unfortunately they don't talk. So there's the guy who carries on the Three Dog Night name. There's only one dog.
Right.
One dog in the pack still carrying on the Three Dog Night name.
Right. And then there's Big Chuck.
Yeah, well, Chuck was definitely the three guys, Danny Hutton, Chuck Negron, and I can't think of the other guy's name. They all had their own distinctive voice.
Sure.
And Chuck is as bad as he was with the drugs and being in the mess that he was. The guy still has parlayed that into a still viable career.
Yeah, Chuck's great. I mean, and let's face it, the Chuck Negron story, one of the all-time CMS stories. I love that story, man.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that his book, Three Dog Nightmare, definitely one of the all-time best reads in music documentary type books.
Oh, yeah, without question.
And then just the fact that you and not to dredge up old stories so much, but you got to hang out with him at his hotel and just shoot the shit with him for what, an hour or two?
Hour and a half, yeah. I just sat with him in his hotel room. He's wearing a pair of sweats and a t-shirt. He was sitting on the side of the bed. I was sitting in a chair, and we just told stories, or he told stories. It was great.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Some of the stories he told about fucking chicks were just amazing. He had some great stories. That's a guy we got to get. Eventually, he's got to do something that we can have him on the show
for. Well,
he
was going to... We were getting set up to have him back on the show like a couple of years ago, and something just didn't happen, or it kind of fell through, or...
Yeah, you know how that goes, man. Probably they found out what we do, and we're like, fuck that.
But, well, based on his own book, I mean, what we do is very tame.
Yeah, but it's okay if he does it. It's not okay if we do it.
Oh, I gotcha. The double standard.
Yeah, don't you know the rules?
No, I wasn't aware of the rules, but thank you for informing me.
That's the rules. That's the way the publicists shield people. They hear about us as being, confrontational, and then they're always like, no, we can't do that.
Sure. Well, anyway.
It's okay. We don't care. We don't really want to do interviews anyway.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that when you get an opportunity to interview a guy who's had quite the career, and he lived in the heyday of real rock and roll debauchery,
yeah,
and is willing to talk about it and tell those stories, that's a rare opportunity to really delve into something like that, and maybe uncover something that hasn't been publicized before.
Right. Well, Chuck was one of the best. And I've interviewed at least 1,000 people, and Chuck is top 5. He was outstanding and just the nicest guy. But boy, did he tell some fucked up stories.
I'm sure he did.
And that story about his dick exploding, Jesus Christ,
too good.
That's unreal, man.
Yeah. Well, even though this is the quote-unquote the classic metal show, Chris and I do like other things outside of metal.
Sure.
And, that was kind of what I was brought up listening to, Three Dog Night and the Doobie Brothers and things like that. And speaking of which, our good friend and fake producer, Wheezy, sent over this week, which we're going to cover tonight, the latest list of asking prices of bands.
Oh, for this summer?
For this summer.
Oh, good.
So we've got a good subject material there, because I think you're going to be pretty surprised at some of the names on the list and what they're asking.
Are we going to play the game? The guessing game?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool.
Yeah, so Wheezy, he has a little connection of, I guess, a local or Chicagoland promoter.
Okay.
Who basically handles a lot of acts.
Right.
And all of the asking prices, he gave me the cut sheet on all the asking prices.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, I'm in for that.
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun.
Cool.
And then, of course, I see that you were very active on this whole shooting situation in Florida.
Yeah, I had a couple things to say.
Yeah. Well, I saw some stuff today, as a matter of fact, which was totally unrelated to the shooting, but people more or less parlaying the shooting into other tragedies that happen.
Okay.
And the story itself is not so interesting as the comments are.
All right.
People basically drawing a parallel between this situation and the shooting in Florida.
Well, isn't that the way? And then whining about it?
No, it's more of a parody type situation. People and their sense of humor. It's I got a good laugh. People have good sense of humor, and you know that people who are literate enough to read or comment, they know what's really up.
Right.
They're not sucked in by the tripe that's fed them through the mainstream media.
Right.
So everybody has a way of dissecting these stories to where it's just like everybody kind of gets I think people are becoming a little more, what's the word? They know what the real story is.
Right.
They're not buying into the
bullshit.
The bullshit. Yeah, I guess that would be the best way to explain that.
Sure.
So we'll cover that a little bit.
All right.
And then let me see. Bob Nobandian, he's in the chat room tonight.
Okay.
He sent over the link to you and I for the latest release of Inside Metal.
Yes, I'll be watching that tomorrow. Did you watch it?
I just got the email and I noticed that the password doesn't work.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I tried it.
Come on now, Bandian.
I tried it 4 times and it just said incorrect password.
Slacking, Bob. I know we're the first and all, but you're slacking.
Yeah, but he's got a lot of great things on the schedule for 2018.
All right.
So there's going to be a lot of video content going to be released this year.
Can't wait.
Through the Inside Metal series and whatnot.
Sure.
So if Bob wants to call in and talk about any of that, he's welcome to do so. I know he's going to head out to a party.
Cool.
And he said he would catch a couple hours of the show tonight before he headed out to a friend's party tonight.
Well, that'll be fun.
So, all right. The CMS phone line has been ringing and ringing and ringing. So who do you think wants to talk to us so bad that they keep hitting redial?
It's either John Rufo or Tim. I'm going to go with Rufo.
You think?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Rufo making a comeback.
All right, let's see. Hail and kill, caller. You're on the air. Hail and kill, caller. You're on the air. Well, somebody's listening to their rap music.
All right, cool.
So, must be a butt dial.
Yeah.
But
thanks for calling.
But every time I look down, the phone is just ringing and ringing and ringing.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think that was like the intro to the show like 20 minutes ago. Wasn't that the crazy bitch music?
It could have been.
Just a little behind.
Somebody on delay.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, what's happening in your world aside from a fucked up back?
Well, I got a show that you have to watch, dude. The show called Power. Have you heard of it?
I know of it. Is that it's kind of like a sex and drugs and money and...
It's kind of Sons of Anarchy, but it's more, it's like street gang type thing like that. But it's so good, man. It's there's no real the main stars. There's nobody really big. There's no real big names, at least that I know of. I don't recognize any of those people. But the like Turtle from Entourage is in it as a bit character, and there's a couple other bit characters that you would recognize. But I'm watching this thing. I'm on season 3 of this show, and I will say it's excellent. The main black chick is this little 5-foot girl with gigantic tits and fucking a perfect ass, and she is just naked and being fucked in like at least once an episode, which I love that. And it's like on Stars, so it actually shows the nudity and stuff. It's really good. This Latina chick, and I don't know what her name is either, but she looks kind of like Nikki Bella from the WWE. Just hot. And she's naked and getting the shit fucked out of her every episode. So for that level, it's good. But I have a reason for bringing this up other than it's a pretty damn good show. I'm watching today, and I'm in season 3, and they're working a deal with a priest that sells guns like on the down low.
Okay.
Guess who the priest is?
I don't know. Who is it?
Jim Norton.
Really?
and it's a serious role, and it's a recurring role. He's in at least 4 episodes.
Huh.
He's playing a priest that's working with the drug guys to sell guns and move heroin or whatever, coke. I was like, get the fuck out of here. I'm watching all of a sudden Jim Norton as a priest, giving confessional.
Right.
I was like, good Lord, man, that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Jim Norton,
yeah.
Is he still on XM doing a show? Is he still doing that?
Yeah, he's still doing Jim and Sam.
All right. And do you listen to it?
Not even a minute.
Not very good.
No, not a fan.
Mm-hmm.
Jim is a good third mic. He's not a good lead.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I've been trying to catch up on I haven't listened to Opie and Jim's show when it was still on. Mm-hmm. And I know, obviously Opie got fired way back in October or something like that.
That's something like a September, October, whatever.
Yeah. And, I caught up on that argument thing or that thing you told me where they had the big blowout.
Sure.
I caught up on that. And then I caught up with Jim talking about the relationship that he has over there at XM.
Right.
And the fact that now how it's strange how things have turned that he has gotten to the point to where Anthony is allowed to come on their show and come to the XM building or the Sirius XM building. Mm-hmm. But Opie is totally like out.
Yeah, he's out. They all hate him. They take turns, and the comedians that come in on Artie and Anthony come in and just bash on Opie.
Wow.
Pretty much 3 times a week at a minimum.
So what happened to that guy? I mean, what do you think happened to Opie?
He got married.
Well, I know that. So that just changed his whole demeanor and everything?
Well, the way it sounds from listening to these comedians all bust him, he was always kind of a dick. But once they, as time went on, they just stopped communicating with each other, less and less. And the comedians all hated him because, like, when how one of the things that was cool about O&A was when they would have comedians in, they would all just fucking trash each other.
Right.
And anytime they trashed Opie would, like, get pissed off and would ban them from doing the show and shit like that.
Is that right?
That's what they all say.
Okay.
They all say that's why they never really included Opie in any of that stuff, because when they did, they were worried about not being booked back on the show.
Okay. I see. I'm just catching up on all this whole drama.
Sure.
And it's just like there were just so many things going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Of that I didn't know all that was going on.
Well, I would have never guessed when they came out and said how much Anthony came out and said how much he hated Opie. I would have never guessed that in a million years.
No.
I mean, on air, they were able to fake it better than just about anybody. I mean, they had their arguments on the air, but, you do anything with anybody for 20 years, you're going to fucking argue with them. That's just part of the game, especially if you do it every day.
Right.
You're going to argue with people. But, yeah, they do not like each other at all. And now I think because Opie was such a cock, he's been pretty much blackballed everywhere. Nobody wants to work with him. That's why he doesn't have another job.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you would think, the guy was on, I would argue, the second biggest or third biggest show of all time. What was bigger than O&A? I would say Rush, and I would say
Howard Stern. Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Not really.
They're third biggest, at least of the last 20 years, they're the third they're in the top 5 biggest.
Absolutely.
I'm sure somebody will say, well, yeah, Bob and Tom or whatever. But, whoever, they're top 5. And for a guy that was the lead on a top 5 show to not be able to find another job, that's, that says that he must be a cunt. It just says it.
So succinctly put.
Well, it just is what it is. I don't know Opie at all, but just judging from whatever, if it was just Anthony saying it or just Anthony and Jim saying it, I would say, okay, well, they all had their inner working of, problems that they could have had being on a show together. I would get that, but it's every comedian that came into the place was saying the same shit. So I think there's probably some truth to it.
Well, you would think that Opie had made enough money to where, if he wanted to, he could retire.
Yeah, I can't imagine that he needs another job, but he's on social media talking about getting a job. So, he keeps talking about, well, I had this big meeting, and that always turns out to be bullshit.
With who?
At least it turns out to be not a job.
With who is he meeting with? Like what kind of an outlet could an Opie get a job with? Obviously he's not going to get back with Sirius XM, and I can't imagine him going to a terrestrial radio show.
Yeah, could. You never know, man. Or, anymore, like maybe a Podcast One would hire him, and, I'm sure he could generate ad revenue, I would think. Don't you think?
Yeah, but is that, could you imagine being a guy, what do you think Opie and Anthony, what do you think their yearly salary was each?
I think they said at the end $3 million.
$3 million apiece.
$3 million apiece, and Jim got half that.
Okay, so say an Opie goes to a Podcast One platform. Can you imagine going to work? There's no way that he could possibly generate $3 million for himself in a podcast situation. Do you?
Well, no, that day is done. But I mean, look at what Anthony's doing. I mean, if you do the math, Anthony probably has 25,000 subscribers at $8 a piece. So what's that? $2 million a month?
Well, the difference between what Anthony does and what, a podcast one deal is Anthony, I don't know what kind of money Anthony has, but obviously everything he does is top of the line.
Sure.
And
it's $200,000 a month, not $2 million a month.
Yeah. And to build his broadcast studio that he has with all the video broadcast and the obviously the audio equipment and everything that he needs to be able to have a show like that. Mm-hmm. He's definitely invested a lot of money.
Sure.
And the thing with Anthony is because of the future of broadcast media, mm-hmm. he's on the cutting edge of being able to own a very successful quote unquote network.
Yeah. Now, if he would just hire better shows, he'd be in good shape.
Yeah, but he's still growing. He's still new.
Yeah.
So
he pays Artie a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah,
though.
but my point is that he is on the cusp of getting away from your traditional television shows, traditional people who just broadcast on YouTube.
Sure.
He's got a platform that is probably at the very beginning of what broadcast radio / television could be, much like our friend over there at what used to be T Radio V.
Oh yeah, sure.
Very similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that even though he may not be making the ridiculous amount of money that he was being paid for Sirius XM, that if he stays with it long enough, whether he's directly involved with actually hosting a show or not,
sure,
he's going to probably do okay.
Yeah, and even if he doesn't, let's be honest, he had 12 years with the big salary.
Yes.
He had 10 years at Sirius XM that he was making at least $1.5 million, $2 million a year. And, when he was at K-Rock before Sex for Sam, they were making big money then.
Sure.
So, I'd imagine Anthony realistically made $20-25 million at some point.
Right.
Now, he did have an ugly divorce and everything else where he had to pay out a bunch of fucking money. But, even if that got cut in half, that's still $10 million in the bank.
Right.
I mean, the best studio, what's that going to cost? $200,000? I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, you got to admire those guys who can reinvent themselves. But as far as Opie goes, not for me personally, not being aware of the turmoil that he's kind of caused for himself,
mm-hmm. Right,
and basically making everybody dislike or hate the guy,
right?
But in the end, there, I guess it got pretty ugly.
Yeah, it seems like it, but I like the Artie and Anthony show. I'll be honest. I wish Artie would go away, but.
So what would you like to see on a Anthony platform?
Here's the problem with Artie. One, he doesn't take it as a legitimate job. He makes a fucking buttload of money.
Okay.
He makes $4,000 a show.
An episode.
Wow. 4,000.
Okay. All right.
90, I would say in the last 2 months, he has shown up on time 2 times, maybe 3.
Okay.
He's always late. Sometimes he just doesn't come at all. Just, whatever. Fuck it. Who cares? Doesn't give a shit about it. And then he just sort of tells the same stories over and over again. He doesn't have anything new to tell. I didn't really listen to Artie that much when he was on Stern, so it's not like I'm burned out on the shit because he's telling the same shit from Stern. The only real experience I have with Artie is on the Artie and Anthony show, and I'm already sick of his stories. And he was out for rehab or whatever reason he was out. or jail or something in the last month or 2 months ago or whatever it was, a month and a half ago. And when he was out, they had this comedian named Aaron Berg, who's on a really funny show on the Kumia thing called In Hot Water. And Aaron Berg was on there, and that fucking guy was hysterical. I mean, I could see myself listening to that every day. Those Anthony and Aaron Berg doing stories and doing comedy. I could listen to that every day.
Right.
Because Aaron wasn't just over talking Anthony on every fucking topic. You know, Ant tries to tell a story and Artie's interrupted about the same old bullshit. Well, when I was a longshoreman back in the... Shut up. We get it. You fucking worked on a boat. All right, we got it. Enough.
Well, when they rebranded the show the A&A show, or what is it called, the AA?
Artie and Anthony. It's just called Artie and Anthony.
Oh, I thought it was like
show.
AA show. Well, you know, I questioned, you know, whether that was going to be a longevity thing. In fact, I think we talked about it here on the show.
Sure.
And because, you know, Artie is not the most stable guy in the world.
No, he's not. He's ridiculously a boob.
Yeah. And I had to wonder, you know, why Anthony would hitch his wagon to an Artie that, you know, has a terrible track record.
Name recognition. He was able to raise the price of subscriptions based on Artie, you know, having a guy from the O&A show and a guy from the Stern show together, you know, is selling. And Artie, for better or for worse, is a highly paid comic. He's one of those upper tier comic guys. And because of that, you know, you get those two together, and you know, it does attract subscriptions. And it has attracted subscriptions, but the actual show itself is difficult to listen to sometimes. Now, sometimes it's great. Artie asking Chris Hansen if he ever fucked a kid was hysterical. Looked him dead in the eye and asked him if he ever fucked a kid.
Sure.
That shit fucking made me laugh for days, but it was, you know, that was like old school cringe humor that was so good.
Right. But
those are rare moments, you know, and most of the time it's tough to get. I don't even know how to put it. You know, it's something you and I have worked very hard not to do, which is, you know, learning your, you know, hate to pull back the curtain here, but we'll pull it back a little bit. To make this work right, especially where you and I are not in the same room, one of the core ingredients is not to talk over each other constantly. If we do that, then it won't be good, because all you'll hear is, bah, you know, that's all you'll hear.
Right.
And you know, you and I both have some, you know, we don't really have to talk about it anymore because we've done this so much, but we definitely have verbal cues to know when to talk and when to shut the fuck up. You know, Artie doesn't have that. So Anthony starts to tell a story and Artie just blasts over him with his own story. And like the other day, he was trying to tell some story, Anthony was, and they kept circling back to it. And he finally told the story at like the 75-minute mark of a 2-hour show.
Right.
And it was like what he was opening the show with. And it was like, dude, shut the fuck up and let him tell the story. And then comment on it or interject here and there during the story, but let him get into the story. You know, I mean, and again, those guys are making a lot of money and I'm not. So I don't know, but I know it's frustrating as a listener sometimes because I find Anthony to be the funnier of the two. So to me, it's just not as good with when Artie's there as when other guys are there.
All right. Well, I don't get to watch the compound media rarely. And the few shows that I have seen of the AA show, it's tough to watch because
Artie?
Because of Artie.
Yeah.
You know, because Anthony, he's kind of very animated, and you know, just kind of he's just got that quirky sense of humor,
Sure.
And then with Artie, and I said this on the show before, where he's turned away from him.
Yeah.
It's a weird dynamic, and it's just like, I just can't see the chemistry going on there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, sometimes it's really fun, but it's. I mean, they've done some really funny stuff, you know, and I won't say that they won't. I'm not shitting on it. I listen to it every day, so I'll put it this way: it's funny enough to where I don't cancel it, and it is a mainstay in my listening. Every day I listen to it, so I do enjoy it. But it could be so much better. And dude, I'll send you over some MP3s or you have the link. If you just look up the AA show when Artie was in rehab, Look him up with Aaron Berg. Aaron and him had such a good chemistry, and those shows were hysterically funny.
Okay.
I mean, they were hold your stomach funny because they were two funny fucking guys, but they also knew how to. See, the thing that made that work was that Aaron Berg is like the second mic on the show that he does with this other guy, Gino, called In Hot Water.
Okay.
So he's used to being the second mic. You know, he knows how to do that and to wait for his cues and whatever. You know, I wonder, you know, with the Stern show, and again, I really didn't hear much of Artie on the Stern show, but he wasn't really second mic. He was like throw in a line mic.
Yeah,
guy.
he definitely was a Jackie the Joke Man, which basically he replaced Jackie.
Yeah.
To where he would just chime in with a line here and there.
Yeah, or write something and hand it over to Howard to say or something like that. You know, and that's different from being second mic and telling stories and interacting one-on-one. But again, not trying to shit on it. I mean, certainly they're making a fucking ass load of money, but you know, and I enjoy the show, but it's just not as good as it could be, I guess.
Right. Well, another show that I've been catching up on. I've seen several of the episodes, but another show that I've been catching up on YouTube is our good friend Razor Fist.
Oh yeah,
with his metal mythos.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That guy is so talented with his one-liners.
Right.
I mean, I watched. Let's see, what did I watch this week? When I got a chance, I watched the Judas Priest one, I believe.
Okay.
And I watched the one on Wasp.
Right.
And I watched one on Danzig.
Okay.
And this guy, you know, I don't know if he, you know, writes any of his material prior to the show or if he's just, you know, riffing off the cuff.
Sure.
Because his you know, one-liners that he throws out there are pretty damn funny.
Yeah, I like the Wasp one. He was funny on the Wasp one.
And he just, you know, he just riffs.
Sure.
And for a guy like that who has that kind of talent and, you know, obviously he's got good audio and video equipment to where watching his show is, you know, easy on the eyes, easy on the ears. Mm-hmm. And his editing skills are really good because he interjects a lot of, you know, video clips and things into his, you know, into his subject material. Mm-hmm. He does a damn good show. And I'm thinking to myself, see, there's a guy who has a passion for doing something that, you know, obviously he loves doing that.
Sure.
And does a great job at it, but he's certainly not making the kind of money that an Artie and Anthony are making.
No. Dude, you know who's surprisingly good? I was just talking to Toomey about this yesterday. You know who is surprisingly good for a brand new newcomer that hasn't done it before is our good friend Scribble. Scribble's podcast is excellent. I mean, he needs to get himself a better way to record his you know, whoever his guest is, because it definitely sounds like he's using a plunger.
Yeah, he's using the little sucker cup on the back of the phone.
Which he needs to get over that and get himself
a Skype.
And a mixing board.
Yeah.
But I have to imagine he has a mixing board. He records albums.
Yeah.
So he just has to figure out how to pipe it back into his computer.
Yeah,
but
he just needs to get a Skype with a Skype in number and do it like that.
Exactly. But once he gets that worked out, I mean, his podcast is very well produced, and you know, he does a good job editing the the material in and out, and he mixes in all the music clips and stuff. I mean, he does a nice job. It's a good listen. I know you probably are not into the bands that he's talking about, but he does a pretty solid job. It's not bad, and he's comfortable. That's the big thing. He's comfortable on the microphone. He's not all, well, today we're going to talk about corn. He's not all nerved up. He's loose, and he does a pretty solid job. Not bad.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of talented people out there, much more talented than Chris and I, your humble hosts here on the Classic Metal Show, and they do a great job.
Sure.
But we're certainly not lining our pockets.
No, definitely not. Not like some of these jizz buckets.
I guess it all depends on where you're located and who you know.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah. I saw, and this, dude, speaking of this, and it's funny that you bring this topic up because it really kind of annoyed me today. So I'm on Facebook, and I get this ad for, it's Adam Carolla, and Adam Carolla is selling a 6-hour seminar on how to be a successful broadcaster. And I'm thinking to myself, does Adam Carolla really need that? Does he need to do that? I mean, really? I mean, I get it. He's taking advantage of what he's built, but man, talk about prostituting your shit.
Wow.
And somebody made a good point, and I agreed with it fully. In Adam Carolla's case, the formula was pretty simple. I don't need 6 hours to figure it out. It's be famous ahead of time and then do a podcast.
Right.
That's the formula.
Yeah. People who've already made a name for themselves in another medium.
Yeah.
That's a big help.
Yeah, you get a 20 to 30,000 person head start. That's what you get. You get 20 to 30,000 listener head start. And being fair to him, he was in before the big glut of every comedian having a podcast. So he had time, him and Rogan both had time to be like the only legitimate guys doing a podcast.
Right.
And when, that raised the profile as well. People, and also what raised the profile is that he was a frequent guest on Howard Stern.
He was a frequent guest on Howard Stern. He also co-hosted Love Lines.
Yeah,
he was on the Man Show.
Yeah, I mean,
he and Jimmy Kimmel, were partners in the Man Show for the longest time.
Sure, but that's why his podcast blew up, because you take in a time when there wasn't many podcasts, and you take a famous guy, and all of a sudden he's doing basically morning radio with a little bit of cursing mixed into it. And at the time, it was like the shit. It was like, oh, this is something new and fantastic. It was like, this is like satellite radio without the expense. Now, I honestly don't think, if Adam Carolla hadn't done it then and he came out now, I really don't think it would be as big as it is. And I listen to it. It's subscribed on my phone. I listen to it. It's not my first choice. It's like number 5 or 6 in my auto playlist, but I do listen to it. I mean, it's entertaining, but I just don't think he would be huge now. I think he had a lot of breaks, and for him to be out there selling how to do a podcast, stop it. First lesson 1, do 2 or 3 shows that do 2 million to 10 million listeners a week or a day or an episode or whatever. Once you do that, then you'll have enough name recognition to do a successful podcast.
Right.
Well, and then you don't need all the other lessons about equipment and shit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if, speaking of someone who, has been just slugging it out for over 30 years is our friend Eddie Trunk.
Sure.
Now, had he not gotten a break on being on VH1 Classic, doing his news updates and, of course, hosting that metal show and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Would anybody know who Eddie Trunk is outside of, like, New York?
No, he'd be the Matt Shaughnessy of New York City.
Yeah, of course.
The big tongue guy.
Yeah, so if you get a break to where people know your name or see your face or whatever, and then you start a podcast, Yeah, highly likely that some people are going to follow you, or you're going to have a pretty good built-in audience.
Yeah, but for Adam Carolla to be out there hawking for $30, hey, buy this and you could have the success that I had.
No.
Stop it.
Doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way at all.
I mean, well, I'll give you a prime example. Right. Here in Chicago, there's a popular DJ. He's been around since the 70s. Steve Dahl, you may know the name.
I've heard of him. Sure,
yeah.
You've told me about him.
Yeah, he's been around since the 70s. He's the one who did that whole disco demolition.
Right. He's the impression guy, right? Is that him that does all the impressions?
No, not really. His big claim to fame here was back in I think it was 1979.
Okay.
He and his militia at the time, the Steve Dahl militia, he had a popular morning radio show.
All right. He's the record burn guy.
Yes.
I got it.
He and Gary Meyer were two big guys in Chicago back in the 70s and into the 80s.
Right.
And the whole disco sucks thing was, at its peak.
Sure.
And then, as a publicity stunt, the morning radio show encouraged people who were attending a White Sox game,
right,
bring their disco records. And they piled them up out in the outfield and they blew them up. And it was a bigger explosion than what they had anticipated. They just thought it was just going to be like a, little boom, and records go flying or whatever. But apparently they really loaded it and it just caused mayhem.
That's funny.
Yeah. So it was called the disco demolition. Anyway, that's his big claim to fame here, aside from his long career in radio.
Sure.
But there was a time there when he got, he didn't get a renewed contract.
Okay.
And he went to podcast only. And it was subscription based. I don't know what it was. I think it's $3 or $4 a month or something. Very inexpensive. It wasn't real expensive, but I don't think he did that good with it.
Probably not. If it's gone now, he definitely
No, he still does it. But see, he was brought back on commercial radio.
Okay.
He's now on AM radio.
So he did it just to keep his chops up.
Yeah, more or less, yeah. And he didn't have a contract, and he went to podcast only. But, outside of Chicago, I don't know how successful the guy was. And there's a guy who had a 30-year career.
Sure.
No,
I get it. Dude, your story just reminded me of a story that I don't think I've ever told this on the air. Maybe I have. I don't know. This is an oldie. But talking about explosions. So our good friend Rockin' Randy asked me to come out to a show, this one show for his band, and he was playing at I forget what was. Do you remember the name of the bar in Eastlake? Not all the way out in Geneva, but there was some bar in Eastlake.
I know it. I know what it is, but I can't remember what it was. I think L.A. Guns has played there.
Yeah, it was it had a nice stage, but it had an outdoor rail around the stage. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. It was like a banister rail, like you'd find on a porch.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I know. I was there once.
Yeah, well, I was there once for Randy. It was Randy's band was playing, and my friends in the band Girth were playing, and it was something I booked. I think the headliner was a band called IML out of Canada.
Okay,
it was that were signed for 3 seconds and weren't very good, but somehow I ended up booking them. I think it was a Music's Bottom Line thing or something. So back in these days, this was when Randy was doing the Dust in Our Bones character.
Yeah, where he'd come out, he was trying to do an Iron Maiden Eddie type character.
Yeah. But he called his character Dust in Our Bones. And Dust in Our Bones was this skeleton face guy.
Yeah, he had his hatchet. He would...
Yeah. Had a big hatchet, had a trench coat, had a big old stupid hat,
and a big chunk of log.
Yeah, a big old stump in the middle of his stage
where he would hatchet stuff.
Right. Well, he was coming out to do it, and the way it was supposed to work was they do the whole thing with the, with the drums and the guitars going full speed, and then come into a crescendo, and then they kick into whatever the first song is, so it's like dun 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 dun, whatever the song is,
It's the big buildup.
Yeah, it's the big buildup, exactly. And Randy had these flash pots.
Right.
They weren't real ones. They were, I think, fucking coffee cans or something that Randy had just built, and I don't know what he was thinking, because this was an indoor small club. Would you say that place held 200 people?
Yeah, it's just a little bar.
It was tiny. Talk about him getting lucky, and Great White not so much. Jesus. He must have filled these things to the top with powder. And so he had I don't know what it was, some sort of a mechanism that would spark this fucking thing with his foot.
Right.
And he was timing it so that when he hit it, it would blow up, and he would hit the log, or whatever you call the stump, with the axe at the same time. And when he hit the log with the axe, it would boom.
Yeah.
And then they kick into the show, right?
Right.
He hits this fucking thing, and it goes off like a goddamn bomb blew up. There it is. That's it right there. That's the place.
Yeah.
That is the place. Well, he hits this trigger or whatever, and it's just like I thought he was dead. I mean, it was loud like a fucking bomb, and it blew him into the drum kit.
Well, that's just like that's like Nader on The Decline of Western Civilization, where they had those concussion bombs, or they had those flash pots, and they overloaded them with too much gunpowder and created a concussion bomb. Just boom.
It was unbelievable. And he flew back into the drum kit, and then he just pushed himself up and just went on to rocking out with Rock and Roll Heaven, or whatever their opening track was.
Right.
Pretended like that's what it was supposed to do. I just remember looking at the club owner. The club owner was fucking pissed.
Yeah. Horrified.
He was mad because it blew a hole in his fucking stage.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I mean, he had so much powder that it blew a hole in the corners of the stage. I was like, God damn it. Typical Randy, man.
Yeah. Nice. All right, dude. Well, we got a good show for you. I mean, you seem like you're in good spirits tonight.
I am.
In spite of the back situation.
Yeah, I'm all right. As long as I don't move around too much, I'm fine. It's just moving, getting up and down is like, oof, not the best. But like I said, I took a handful of aspirin before the show, and I'm drinking coffee to keep me lively, and we'll make it through it.
Excellent. All right. Well, I saw Demon earlier in the chat room. She was saying that, since you guys are playing Snake Eyes 7,
mm-hmm.
which we're been promoting the new Medicine Man release for our good friend Bill Shavis over there at High Volume Music.
Yeah.
She wanted to hear some Snake Eyes 7 from their previous release.
Okay.
13 Crows.
All right.
And she wanted to hear Can't Fall Down.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to play some more Snake Eyes 7 and take a short break, and we will be back and get things cranking here. So here it is at Snake Eyes 7 exclusively here
on your classic metal show.
Okay, this is the Madman Cole Stevens from Snake Eyes 7. You're listening to Chris and Neeley, and you better fucking enjoy it.